Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our psychology videocast. So today we are going to be talking about a specific type of development, right? So we're in the development unit, and yesterday we talked about the development of people over the lifespan physically, right? So what happens to them as they age, what does their body do, those kinds of things. Today I want to focus a little bit on cognitive development. So this is the development of thought, right? How do they mature as thinkers? How does the brain grow in order to have them understand different complex issues and problems over our lifespan? Right? So how does thinking and reasoning develop over time? So first things first, right? The name of the guy who's like big on this is Piaget, not Piaget, right? Piaget, okay? He is very sophisticated. And he actually came up with this theory that says that all development, cognitive development, happens in 4 stages. Now, of course, right, it's not actually that neat and perfect, and a lot of our research now shows us that the stages overlap or that it's not always an exact pattern. But to be honest, with a lot of things, he was pretty close, okay? So that's why we still study him today. So the 4 stages are listed on the bottom here: sensorimotor, preoperational, concrete operational, and formal operational. And yes, you will have to know their names, you will have to know the ages, and you'll have to know what happens in each stage. So get ready, here we go. First things first, right? So sensorimotor, stage 1. This is the first stage, right? So from the day you're born to when you're 2 years old, Piaget thought you were in the sensorimotor stage, okay? And what happens in this stage is very, it goes very much along with the name he gave it. So sensorimotor, okay? Basically, babies are trying to figure out the world and think about and understand their world using their senses, right? And their motor skills, okay? Babies, everything goes in the mouth, right? So they're always trying to touch it or feel it or lick it. They're moving around, they're bumping into things, right? Okay? They take in the world through their motor skills and their senses. They grasp, right? And they touch you. And they might, taste something and spit it out, right? They're trying to figure out what they like, what they don't like, what they understand based on their senses and their motor skills, okay? Now, some different, interesting things that happen during this time period. Stranger anxiety. So around 6 months of age, children start to develop stranger anxiety. And this is where they no longer want to go to the stranger, right? So when the baby is really little in the hospital, gets passed around to everyone, it's an infant, anyone will watch it. All of a sudden, it sees that it's with someone else and not with its mom or dad, and it starts to sob, right? This is when you get the little kids, they go to see Santa Claus, and they freak out. Right on Santa Claus's lap because they're like, who's this creepy guy with the white beard? Okay, so stranger anxiety. And they also lack something called object permanence. Object permanence is the idea that objects exist even if you can see them or not, right? So if I showed you this coffee, right? Yay, delicious coffee. Okay, so if I show it to you and then I put it away, you know it's still here, it's just not in your view. Object permanence is the fact that little kids don't know this. That's why they love peekaboo. Because when you do this, you're actually gone. And when you do this, peekaboo, you're there again. So the little kid is like, whoa, what happened? You're gone, you're there, you're gone, you're there. They don't have the idea that just because something's hidden doesn't mean it evaporates into thin air. Okay. Preoperational, right, is the next one. So somewhere between sensorimotor and preoperational, the stranger anxiety ends and object permanence begins, okay? So this next stage is 2 to 7 years, and the characteristics of this stage are the lacking of logical thought. So they tend to use their intuition, and a lot of times they're very good at playing imaginary games or using their imagination or pretend play because they don't really have to go by the rules of logic, okay? They tend to give inanimate objects personality traits. This should be one word, inanimate. So, for example, the sun is happy and the thunder is angry, right? Those kinds of things. They are very egocentric. So, when they are very egocentric, they only see things from their perspective. This is why, if you've ever seen Big Daddy, he's like, I win, right? So it's all about him, what he thinks. It's his game and his rules. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter that he can't always win. I win, right? So this is why everything is always about them. They literally do not understand that you see something different from them, right? So if I were to show you this water bottle, right, and I asked you what you saw, you said Dasani, right? But then if I asked you what I see, you would probably say the nutritional facts or whatever you know is in the back. A little kid who doesn't have this would say, I saw Dasani, because whatever they see is what I see. They don't understand that, okay? And they don't have something called conservation. So this is really cool because you get to play kind of little tricks on kids during this age. They don't understand that the properties of something stay the same even though the shape changes. So if you only have 3 cookies left in the box, right? And you want 2 cookies and you want them to have 1 cookie, but you don't want your little brother who's 5 to go, I want a cookie. So secrets, right? You break one of the cookies in half and you take 2 and you give him 1 cookie cut in half. You don't believe me, but he will think they are the same if he does not have conservation because it'll look like 2 pieces. It's very, very hard to imagine that that could even be possible, but it is. And I'll show you some clips in class. They also don't have reversibility, right? So reversibility is that relationships can go in one direction, but also in the other. So like you have a sister and your sister has a sister too because their sister is you, like that kind of thing. So like this kid, you ask him like, oh, which one has more liquid? And he says this one, but they have the same, right? This one's just tall and skinny. Okay, so the next topic or the next stage is concrete operations. And in this stage, right, 7 to 11 years, you have logical thinking, right? Logical thinking about concrete events. So they're not very good at like thinking hypothetically, what if, that kind of stuff, or like imagine the whole world. They're very good at concrete things. You know, they can add and subtract concrete items. They can do word problems as long as they make sense. If you give them like a situation that doesn't really make sense, they won't like say it's okay. So if the rules don't make sense, even though it might be like an imaginary rule or whatever, they have a very hard time understanding it. And I'll show you a clip of what that looks like in class. It's like an activity that they did with a mirror, I believe. But I'll show you the clip in class and you'll see. They cannot think abstractly, right? Like a lot of you can as teenagers. But they do have now what we call the theory of the mind. And this is now, they're no longer egocentric in that they can understand another's point of view. Now, of course, most of us are egocentric all the way through, you know, especially teenage years, right? So, but they're not egocentric in that they literally think that the whole world sees what they see. They understand that you have a view and I have a view and they might be different. Conservation skills are established, so you can't trick them anymore. So the last stage, right? This is from 11, 12, 13, and up, right, for the rest of our life. So obviously the goal is to get to formal operational. And the idea here is that you have complex, abstract thoughts. You're able to think about the world, what would happen if this or that happened. You can think about discrimination and prejudice and racism. You can do imaginary numbers and math, algebra, all these kinds of things, right? Highly symbolic concepts. Philosophy, logic, things that otherwise before that may not have really you've been able to like digest and think about. Now you're concerned with truth, fair, justice, kind of at a higher level, right? So it's not just like, oh, this isn't fair, but it's more like what does fair mean? What does justice mean? What does that look like? How do we know? That kind of stuff. And then, you know, Piaget said that some people never make it to this stage, that they are always kind of stuck in that concrete operational or like somewhere in between. But the goal was to end up here and then you'd stay there for your entire life. That's all for now. And remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.